Just a couple hours ago, I'm at practice thinking about what are Jesse and I going to talk about today? Well, there's injuries. There's the Cowboys game. And then I'm just walking off the field and I'm like, oh, who is this distinguished old gentleman walking right by me? Oh, it's the co-chairman of the team, John York, the guy who'd rather not be here. He lives in Youngstown, Ohio, but when things aren't going so well, he shows up. He's done it. I don't believe he had to do it last year. They started off 5-0, but the previous few years when they started off slow, there would be a week where he'd be there. And I don't know if he had anything to say or if his mere presence delivered a message. How do you take John York showing up to practice the week after the mollywhopping, the shellacking, the embarrassment to the Chiefs?
First of all, I got two things to say. One thing is, I know that I didn't win yesterday's little contest on the show, but I feel like I've been the best contestant on the show, the four-man front, the whole time, right? So I just want to put that out there. I know that I don't have a trophy to show for it, but I'm the best. Everybody knows that.
I'll let you finish, but Jesse's been the best contestant of all time.
I also want to say, I do find it funny that somebody literally paid last night on the show and said, how long until John York shows up? And the very next day he showed up. That was a super chat from last night.
Maybe John York was the one who posted the super chat, laughing, knowing he was already there.
How do I take it? I take it how I took the last ones, which is there's concern coming from the front office. And they're there to put pressure on Shanahan and this team. And I also think that he's probably there to assess things. I mean, they're getting close to a trade deadline. He probably wants to see, like, hey, who's hurt, who's not, what's the returns look like for these guys, and then what's the pulse of the team. What's cool is he has something to compare it to. He has those previous seasons as data points. And so maybe he goes in today and is like, this is not like the other seasons. There's something clearly off here. We're not going to be buying anything at the trade deadline. They're not going to turn it around. So I think that there's multiple reasons for being there. But the main reason is obviously that they have a losing record. It's a disappointment. And he's there to put pressure on this team and Kyle Shanahan. That much is clear because he's done it 2 other times after they started out way slower than what they should have. So yeah, it's obvious why he's there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's there to assess. It's a 3-4 team. What can I determine about what's going on here? Is this a team that's going to turn itself around or not? But beyond his assessment, because you wonder how astute he is at judging a football team. I don't know. He's owned this team a long time. Just his presence sends a message, and not just to the coaches, not just to the players, but to the media, to the fans. I mean, I think it's as simple as showing that everyone's on notice. Like if you had a boss who you never saw, who essentially didn't want to do the job and delegated all the things, and you had like an underboss who you really liked, but when things were going bad, that guy showed up, the top boss, and all of a sudden he's just hanging around the office, you'd notice it. And you'd wonder why. And is he looking at me? What is he thinking about me? Is he assessing my performance? I mean, it just seems like it puts everyone on edge. And maybe that's what the Niners need right now.
Well, I do find it ironic that Kyle low-key just did this to Brock allegedly in the locker room, and now John is doing the same thing to him. John wants the media to see him. He wants everybody to know that these guys are on notice. That's why he shows up and does it during practice. It's why he does it unannounced. I'm sure that it was unannounced. And, it's why he's done it when they've been losing in the past. So, yeah, I do. I find it ironic that Kyle was doing something very similar to his quarterback. And 2 days later, he's got to deal with it from his upper management. So,
and don't forget, John York, not John Lynch. John and Denise cut a lot of very big checks this offseason because the way that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch sold the year to them was, look, we can't really afford to think about the future or try to get younger or try to, keep the salary cap flexible so we can make moves in the future. Like, no, we need to bring back everyone. We need to make Christian McCaffrey happy. We need to make Trent Williams happy. We need to give all this money to Brandon Ayuk because we're going to win the Super Bowl, guys. 1, 2, 3 team. Let's go. And now it's 3-4. And if they lose to Dallas next week, like you're looking at a season that could spiral and a team that could tank. And I don't think like it's one thing to tank in 2020 after the first Super Bowl loss where Kyle's in year 4 and still feels like he's ahead of the curve and they've had some injuries. Year 8 after Super Bowl loss number 2 and all the money they've spent out. I don't think that a tank year is acceptable. Although I'm just guessing, but John York's appearance, his cameo makes me feel like he would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe he did, but I'm pretty sure after 2020, when they started out poorly, he wasn't there. And it's because the pressure wasn't on this team. Now, once they got healthy and they started out slow for the next 2 years or what have you, then yeah, it was an issue. And he was showing up, the 2-4 start, the 3-5 start, now the 3-4 start, because the expectations in all 3 of those seasons were high, in which the 49ers were going to, or supposed to be going somewhere. And so I do find it very interesting that he's there right a day after we made the joke, but it really shouldn't surprise us. We've seen this before, but I do want to reiterate a point about him being there, which is he was there the last 2 times. He can go off of what he's seen in the past. Grant, we talked about it all offseason during training camp, how something felt off and it was palpable. If you were there, you could feel it. People joked, they laughed, whatever. The reality is now everybody sees what we saw. We just got an early glimpse of it because we happened to be there a little bit more. You more than me, obviously. But there was a very palpable feeling. This should not be a surprise.
Yeah, it feels like a team that's losing maybe some belief in itself, considering each time they face the Chiefs, it gets a little bit worse. That's the way I see it. And they missed the playoffs this year, man. If they lose to the Cowboys.
If they lose to the Cowboys, that's officially rock bottom. Officially rock bottom.
Yeah. And you'd think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have everlasting job security. You never know what people make very emotional decisions. And I'm not just saying that like that would be an emotional decision, but if the Niners season spirals out of control, they win 5 or 6 games, no one's safe. So there's some urgency in Santa Clara right now. I don't know what else to say about this, but again, if I were doing my job and all of a sudden my boss found it necessary to watch me every day, I would feel like that's a vote of no confidence.
I'm not saying they will fire Kyle or that they even should fire Kyle, but let's pretend they do fire Kyle. How much do you want to bet says it's John that has to do the firing and not Jed? Jed won't do it.
Do you think they would fire one and not both? I'd be nervous too if I were John. Like, would I get to keep my job? Kyle kind of hired me.
I think if they were to fire one, it would be John and not Kyle. Ironically enough, but they'd probably fire both. I guess I don't know. It's tough to say.
I just think it's funny that Jed York's the owner, quote unquote, but when things get serious, Dad shows up.
Yeah.
It seems like Jed's kind of like the kumbaya. Hey, we're all getting along. Are we an organization or are we a family? Or are we all best friends here? Do you guys want to hang out after work and have pizza? And then when things aren't going so well, you got to bring in the dad.
Well, they all did their like off season, growing their mustaches and having fun with it. And it's clear that Jed and Kyle are buddies. You know what I mean? So.
And it's great. Like from Kyle's perspective, it's always nice when the boss is your friend. That way you don't have to worry about things. But it's rough when there's a boss on top of the boss who doesn't come by very much and isn't your friend. And he's watching.
Yeah, that makes it tough.
It makes it tough. Caesar, the QB room, says called it. LOL.
Okay, that's who it was. There we go. I knew somebody sent in the super chat.